What is up, YouTube? This is the 82 and 0 podcast. Today we're going to talk about John Havlicek. Now, he's one of my all-time favorite players in NBA history. He was born April 8th, 1940 in Martins Ferry, Ohio. He was born to a Croatian family. His father was Czech and Croatian, and his mother was Croatian. Havlicek was a master at 3 sports at Bridgeport High School in Bridgeport, Ohio. He was a baseball player, a football player, and a basketball player, obviously. So Havlicek played college basketball at Ohio State University with future 7 All-Star Jerry Lucas, who was actually his roommate. Future first-round NBA draft pick Larry Siegfried, future coaching legend Bobby Knight, and Mel Nowell, among others, at the 1960 State Buckeyes. So he played with some other future NBA stars. And Havlicek was named the alternate of the 1960 United States national team, and this competed in the 1960 Summer Olympics. So I want to talk about his professional career. A lot of people don't know this, but he was actually drafted by the Cleveland Browns of the National Football League in 1962 After completely briefing as a wide receiver in the Browns training camp that year, he focused his energies on playing for the Boston Celtics with head coach Red Auerbach. I think what I've read, a lot of the reason why he wanted to do basketball over football was he liked the idea that you don't get knocked on your ass like you do in football. And basketball players make more because there's less people on a team. And from what I've read about his baseball career, he could have had a career in the MLB too, And anyways, he goes to the NBA after his great college career at Ohio State. I do want to mention at Ohio State, he played 3 years there. He had a pretty successful career. He put up 14.6 points per game, 8.6 rebounds per game, and he shot 50% for his 3 seasons there, which is something I find a little interesting because when he came into the NBA at first, he kind of struggled a little bit with his field goal shooting. And it'd kind of be off and on. Some years he'd shoot 39%, like in 66. In other years he'd shoot 46%. Like in 69, 70. So he could at times be a pretty inconsistent shooter. Now he's drafted, like I said, 1962. He was the 9th pick by the Boston Celtics, and originally he was just a bench role. He would come off the bench, and he's the original 6-man. He would play 27 minutes per game, putting up 14 points and 6 rebounds. And his first year there would actually be Bob Cousy's final year. And he was coming off the bench for Tom Heinsohn. Tom Heinsohn was their starting small forward because they had Tom Sanders at the power forward. So he was kind of like a spark plug coming off the bench for them, And, he's in the early part of those Boston Celtics teams, he's just a high-energy bench player, right? And he had a pretty memorable moment in the 64-65 season. I'm sure many people have heard the famous Havlicek stole the ball. It's all over. It was in the 1965 Eastern Conference Championship game in the 7th game. So it's the final game on April 15th, right? And And the Celtics led the Boston Celtics 110 to 109. There was 5 seconds left. And Boston had the ball. All they had to do was inbound it, right? But Bill Russell threw the pass up too high, and he struck a wire that supports the baskets. So it was a turnover. So that gave the ball to the Sixers with 5 seconds left. That's plenty of time to get a shot off. So Hal Greer was set to throw the inbound pass for the Sixers, and Havlicek ran up and stole the ball from Chet Walker, who that's really the pass was intended to go to. And Havlicek ran. Havlicek was a very fast player. He tipped it off to Sam Jones, and that's it. They ran the clock out. They go, Havlicek stole the ball. He was very, and I want to mention something about him, okay? I've seen some people calling him a bum, right? I remember on Facebook at one point, I saw a post where it showed Bill Russell dunking, and behind him was John Havlicek standing there. And somebody, this fucking idiot in the comments says, oh, look at that plumber in the picture with him. I'm just thinking, as I looked at this dude's profile, I'm like, bro, you've never even made one professional sport. This dude could have potentially had a career in 3 professional sports. And he's one of the quickest players in NBA history. He had endurance like we've never seen before. He never got tired. He ran the most steps in NBA history by far. That was kind of his strategy. He'd run around and tire guys out. You're telling me this guy's a bum? This dude that got drafted by the NFL and NBA? It's just the cognitive dissonance with a lot of these people that don't know NBA history is just insane. And he'd got his nickname Hondo from a 1953 movie of the same name, starring John Wayne. Havlicek revolutionized the 6-man role. So like I say, going into these few championships, these first couple ones there, he was the 6th man. And by 66, 67, this is when he started becoming more of a starter, right? And he's, because Tom Heinsohn was gone by then, he starts putting up 21 points per game. At this point, by the 67-68 season, he's a 3-time All-Star, 20 point per game scorer, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Now, going into the final year with Bill Russell, right? That would be the 68-69 season. This would be the Boston Celtics' 11th championship. And Bill Russell retires, Sam Jones retires, and at this point, it's looking like, you know, the Boston Celtics aren't going to win for a long time. They're going into rebuild mode. So at this point, John Havlicek has 6 championships, and he's the leader of the team. He's still in his prime. So you go to the 69-70 season, the first season without Bill Russell or Sam Jones. He puts up 24 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 6.8 assists, and unfortunately the team was really bad. But they go into rebuild mode. They start rebuilding this team. By 70-71, they had a good core of Dave Cowens, JoJo White, Don Nelson, John Havlicek, and John Havlicek was starting to put up the best numbers of his career. He puts up 28 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists, and he shoots 45% from the field. So you see, he could have had much better numbers earlier in his career, but he was just on a stacked team. So some of his best scoring numbers come later in his career, like 71-72 the following year, puts up 27 points per game. And this Boston Celtics team would become contenders again. And by the 72-73 season, they were at 68-14 in the regular season. And at this point, John Havlicek is getting MVP consideration. He didn't win MVP, but in my opinion, he should have over Dave Cowens. He put up 23 points per game, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. But they lose to the New York Knicks. And they lose to them in Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Although I want to mention John Havlicek was hurt. They could have potentially won the finals that year had Havlicek been healthy. But, that's the thing about the NBA. There's always what ifs. Now, the 73-74 season, the following year, he came back on a mission. Their record isn't as good. They go 56-26. And this time, they make it to the NBA Finals. And they're matched up against the Milwaukee Bucks. And the Bucks won a championship in 71. They had the best player in the league in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And this series was really good. It comes down to a 7-game series. John Havlicek would average 26 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.9 steals. He'd shoot 42% from the field for that series. And he'd win Finals MVP. And they'd defeat the Milwaukee Bucks. So at this point, Havlicek has 7 rings now. Going into the 74-75 season, they go 16-22. Although they would lose in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Washington Bullets. And Dave Cowens was still in his prime, putting up 20 and 14. JoJo White was still in his prime. They had Paul Silas on this team, Paul Westville. But this is when you started to see John Havlicek starting to slow down. And the 75-76 season would be his last championship. So they go 54-28. And they make it back to the finals, right? And Game 5, right? One of the most incredible games in NBA history. The Boston Celtics would win it 128-126. And this game would go into 3 overtimes. It's pretty amazing. I do want to mention, though, Havlicek made a leaning run-up bank shot that appeared to be a game winner. However, Havlicek's shot went in with 1 second left, and Phoenix was allowed 1 final shot after JoJo White converted a technical foul shot for Phoenix illegal timeout. Garherd scored for Phoenix to force the game's 3rd overtime. So I just think it's cool he was in the clutch like that. I mean, they did win the game and they did win the series, but I'm just showing you he had a clutch moment there. And that was it for the 70s Celtics. In 77-78, or 67-67, they go 44-38. At this point, he's not as good as he used to be. He's 36 and he only puts up 16 points per game. They lose in 7 games to the Sixers. In the 77-78 season, they wouldn't even make the playoffs. They'd go 30-52. And that would be his final year. He'd retire at the age of 37. Although there was a lot of speculation that he was going to return for 78-79 and play with Larry Bird, because Bird was originally drafted, but he decided to stay in college 1 more year. So 79-80 would be his first year. But a lot of Boston fans during the time thought he was going to play with Bird. But needless to say, he retires. And his career averages are 20 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4.8 assists. So let's talk about his accolades. He's an 8-time champion, 8-0 in the finals, 11-time All-NBA. He's the 1974 Finals MVP, 13-time All-Star, 8-time All-Defense. Although he would have been more, they didn't keep track of All-Defense until he was 28 in the 68-69 season. So he could have won All-Defense before that. He's a great defensive player, And he's one of the most well-rounded players in NBA history. He was a good playmaker. His career best for assists was 7.5. His career best for rebounds was 9.0. His career best was 28.9 points per game. And coincidentally enough, these all were in the 70-71 season. So he was a good, well-rounded player. He reminds me a lot of, to put him into a modern comparison, I know you can't really compare players. It's impossible, but you can kind of develop an idea. He reminds me a lot of, and I'm not saying he's as good as him, he reminds me a lot of LeBron. He's very athletic, very fast, very strong, good playmaker, good rebounder, and they were both small forwards. And they're both from Ohio. But that's John Havlicek, everyone. Unfortunately, so after he got done playing, he was very smart with his money. He invested in Wendy's when Wendy's was starting up. So he was a multi-millionaire and he got to live in luxury. And he married his wife Beth in 1967, and they stayed married his whole life. And he had a son named Chris Havlicek, who attended the University of Virginia on a basketball scholarship in the early 90s. He had a daughter named Jill Havlicek, who married a Major League Baseball player. But unfortunately, he would battle with health problems at the end of his life. He died of Parkinson's disease on April 25th, 2019, on his 79th birthday. And I remember when this happened, it surprised me because he was one of the youngest ones of the Celtics dynasty of the 50s, 60s, you know? Because this was before Casey Jones or Sam Jones died, so it kind of took me by surprise. I thought John Havlicek was going to be here a lot longer. But it is what it is. That's life. So rest in peace, John Havlicek, one of the most athletic players in NBA history. Let me know what you guys think down below. Thanks for watching.